Welcome back to Tarot by the Bay. I'm David. Okay, this is going to be a reading on free speech, tolerance, and what happens when you go into a situation thinking you know what's going to happen and then finding out what really is going to happen isn't what you expected. Otherwise known as FAFO. F around and find out. Wednesday, University of Washington, Psych 210 class, which is a class on diversity and human sexuality. A male disruptor by the name of Sam Polyak interrupted this psych class. Not once, but twice. Came in, interrupted the class, hurled insults at the teacher, left. 40 minutes later, came back in, hurled more insults at the class, made some Nazi salutes, and was being booed and told to get out by the students. At which point, a couple of students got up and chased this guy out of the class. What ensued is brilliant in what society needs to do. Remember, the First Amendment gives you the right to free speech without basically facing consequences from the federal government. In other words, you can speak your mind and the federal government can't retaliate against you. But that doesn't mean that your speech is without consequences. So this guy goes in there, he gets chased out by the students. While outside, the teacher, the professor leading this class, is walking out, and about several dozen, call it 100 or more students, are behind her. This is a class of like 150 to 200 students, are walking behind her as she is walking towards this young man who's probably in his late teens, early 20s, not a student on campus. And as she's approaching him, he's backing away with his hand up because he's scared, not just because you've got this woman approaching him, but you have the backup of a society behind her. And as he starts backing up more, the students are pressing forward. Teacher's walking boldly. One female student runs up to him and pepper sprays him. At that point, he kind of stumbles away and starts walking away quickly, and now the chase is on. Dozens of students, mostly young men, are running after him till they finally corral him. He's sitting on the ground, and about the worst that happened to him was some guy grabbed his hair for a little bit, and he was shooed off by someone. The students then surrounded this guy while he's sitting on the ground, while waiting for the campus police to come and arrest him. One person came up with his phone, sat right next to this young man and said, "Post-game interview, how's it going for you now?" In other words, you came in here thinking that you were going to be king for a day, and now here you are, surrounded. You've been pepper sprayed, you're surrounded. Nobody beat this guy. Lord knows what could have happened to him. Nobody beat this guy. And he's sitting on the ground whining that the Democrats are supposed to be the party of tolerance. What is it with these young incels? They sit in their chat rooms talking about how wimpy and weak the radical left are, and they go in there and they act like they can go in with impunity and face no consequences. And they find out really quickly that's not the case. Why didn't you just go to Harlem and yell the N-word? I mean, obviously they're smart enough not to do that because that will really get you killed. But they think they can go to a college university on campus, insult a human sexuality class, and be free of any type of consequences that they're concerned about, mainly physical ones. And luckily for him, other than being pepper sprayed a bit, and I don't think they really nailed him that bad, he didn't suffer any physical consequences. This group of students could have easily have beaten and kicked this man into a bloody pulp. And I don't think any jury would have been interested in convicting him. I'm not advocating for violence, but I'm just saying that, in these times that we're in, these students showed remarkable restraint. Probably a lot more restraint than this fellow deserved. Let's take a look at the energy around white supremacy on the right, neo-Nazisms, and society. Because this is what... sorry, I shouldn't come down yet. This is how you handle it. Fine, you want to be free to talk about your white supremacist BS in public? Great. There's consequences. Social consequences. You could lose your job. Society, but polite society doesn't have to tolerate it. King of Pentacles. Ain't the patriarchy fun? Here we go. White males with all the privileges, all the advantages, everything going their way. Talk about fragile white ego crossed with the Six of Coins and the Lover's card underneath it. What's driving this? And it's kind of what's driven this whole fragile white male ego thing the whole time. Driven by wealthy people, they complain that tax money that they have to pay and that's being given to disadvantaged people is purely wealth redistribution. What does wealth redistribution mean? They feel like you're just taking our money because these other lazy slobs, these eaters that don't do anything, you're just going to give my money that I worked hard for, and that's not fair. That's it, in a nutshell. And they don't see that when you have wealth and power and influence, that you have to use that white privilege to help people who don't have that white privilege, to lift them up so that we're on a more even playing field. And eventually, just maybe eventually, the people that are really successful are the really motivated ones, the ones that have brilliant ideas and ways to implement it and things along those lines. So many racial overtones with this. Underneath it all is the Lover's card. The way life has treated them, they've been so privileged. Everything's been so wonderful, and it's just this taxes and helping poor people drives them nuts. And this could be like affirmative action, giving disadvantaged people a helping hand, and they don't like that because it means that they can't just get by on the family name. They actually have to perform, and they want that family name, that want this legacy. In the past, you got the Ace of Swords. They're going to go back to the Civil Rights era, women's suffrage, if you want to go back even further, freeing the slaves, if you want to go back further than that. Society keeps progressing, finding the disadvantaged groups and making societal steps to help them out. Once upon a time, you could only vote if you're a white male landowner. And that's kind of where Project 2025 wants to take us back to it, so that white males have all the power again. Current situation. Oh dear. The Sun card. When Trump came into office and normalized people being their absolute ugliest, especially white supremacists, they have come out of the woodwork and have self-identified. They've exposed themselves. It also exposed just how rampant racism is still in the United States. Racism is so alive and well. It's really disappointing. Overarching energy is the Hermit card. They've exposed themselves. And, and this is kind of like the F around to find out. Because you've exposed who you are, people now know, and they go looking into your personal life to let all your friends, family, employers know exactly who you are. There are suddenly consequences for this freedom. Letting your ugly side out has consequences. You could lose your job. You could lose your spouse. You could lose friend groups because they suddenly realize who the real you is and not the one that you've presented to them. They don't like this. They want this part to go away. Lesson to be learned is the Four of Cups. Again, when you've been the privileged white male and everything's been handed to you, well, not handed to you, but you have all the advantages. You win all the ties. You got a head start and you start at a higher level than your opponents. Everything is easier to achieve even if you're not the most skilled person. The fact that society keeps trying to level the playing field for blacks, for women, for more minority, no, not just slaves, but for slaves, mostly African American, but there were indentured servants in the U.S. The Chinese were not exactly treated well either. Women, and then the civil rights movements, they don't like how society is changing because the advantages that they rested their laurels upon are no longer there. You're going to actually have to work for it. You can't just show up and be white, be a white male, and expect to get everything you want. And they're having a temper tantrum over it. They don't like it. They're scared. Super scared about stuff like this. The fragility of the male ego. Cannot stand the thought. And if you look at their insults, calling people soy boys and betas, and they want to think of themselves as being alphas, like the strong leadership, and they don't even know what an alpha is. They have, from the original paper that defined what an alpha wolf was in wolf packs, and how hyper masculinized that term has become, it has lost all meaning of the original meaning of an alpha. Okay, I've got my cards back here. Wanted to look this up to make sure I got the definition right. I don't know if you've ever heard the term the tolerance paradox. It's what we just saw today. The paradox of tolerance, articulated by philosopher Karl Popper in 1945, states that a tolerant society must be intolerant of intolerance to survive. If a tolerant society extends unlimited tolerance to those who are themselves intolerant, the tolerant are eventually destroyed. Intolerance disappears with them. So like this guy who comes in and does the Nazi salute, a tolerant society has to draw the line and say the Nazi ideal is intolerance to other people, and we will not stand for that. We will not tolerate your intolerance, simply put. So that's why when this guy's whining at the end that, I thought you guys were supposed to be tolerant and like people. Does he have a... I don't have the actual thing that he said. No, by the tolerance paradox, they did exactly what they needed to do. They unified and showed they were not going to tolerate that. And then all of a sudden, this punk is on an island. And suddenly realizing that, yeah, he may be able to bully around one person, but you're not going to bully around 150 people. That keyboard warrior found out what happens when you're exposed. The professor in this, a woman by the name of McNichols, did state, I want to take a moment to acknowledge how extraordinary you all were today, in a message read in part to her class. In an incredibly upsetting and disruptive situation, you showed care for one another, acted quickly, and supported me and your classmates. Your solidarity and compassion speak volumes about the kind of people you are. Isn't it nice to get a nice story once in a while in this crazy world that we live in? Will this show me about the future of not tolerating intolerance in the United States? Let's take a look at that. Okay. Eight of Swords. This is the problem with tolerance, is that you feel like you can't speak out against intolerance. And we are working past this. You don't have to be victimized by other people's intolerance. Yeah. The challenge is the Knight of Wands. You have to be prepared, though. And when you see intolerance, you have to act. You can't sit on the sidelines and sit it out. They say democracy is a full contact sport. So is being intolerant of intolerance. The reward underneath it all is the inclusivity, the joy and the happiness, and the right to pursue your happiness in this country. You stand up for everybody when you don't tolerate intolerance. In the past, the Fool card, it's kind of like I hate to say hippy dippy stuff, because I'm sure a number of people who watch this show were hippies at one point in life. It's just a quote that my late mother-in-law used to use. Former late mother-in-law. She's not my mother-in-law after the divorce. But it's that tolerance of everybody's got their thing, and we just need to tolerate everybody in peace and love. Yeah, peace and love is great only if people are trying to put out peace and love. If they're putting out ugliness and hatred and intolerance, you don't need to tolerate that. Current situation is the Knight of Cups. You can talk to them. You can try and implore them, educate them, reach out, build bridges. Those are all great things, but some people don't want this. And you have to respect their decision not to want this. And the inversed, the Knight of Cups is the false friend. The intolerant use the false argument that tolerant people are hypocritical if they don't tolerate the rotten behavior that they're exhibiting. That is not the case. And that's the key card right there. Overarching energy is judgment. You can be kind and give people the benefit of the doubt, but you have to be a critical judge of the situation. If somebody comes in just being disruptive, call to arms. Call people up. Society will rise up and say, we will not put up with your crappy behavior. They will also rise up and support your behavior. Just like the teacher went out, the class rose. They answered her clarion call. They followed. Outcome. What ended up happening? You have solidarity in the classroom. Every kid in that class, and kid by I mean young people, they're 18 to early 20s, they can look around and know that their fellow students have their back. And the teacher knows the students have her back if something like this were to happen. News alert, by the way, this is not the first time this has happened to this particular professor. This is actually the second time. Second time people have come in and disrupted her class. And she chased them off the first time. I believe the term she used was mama bear mode. She went to mama bear mode and chased them out. This time, she walked out and she had the full strength of 100 plus students behind her. You got to believe that neo-Nazi just wondered what the heck he did wrong that day. Why are they not just, crying in their soy milk lattes and taking his abuse? The last thing he expected was this. And if people know who he is, it's going to be humiliating. Because those are a bunch of blue-haired, nose-pierced, soy milk latte, gay-loving people that chased you away and you ran away scared. Toxic masculinity is its own weakness. Oh my God. Society is better for it. Society is better when everybody sticks together, is what I'm trying to say. The outcome is the Ten of Wands. It's difficult to take action. But the more action you take, the easier it gets. It's hard. The first step with this awkward bundle is the hardest. But once you get momentum, you stay on top. But again, you have to have a plan and you have to stay on top of things. You can't let your guard down. That's the difficult part. You always have to be vigilant. You always have to be active. This is the thing that scares the right the most. The cancel culture, as they call it. They don't understand the line that they cross. Because to them and their groups, what the filth that they're spewing is perfectly acceptable. Why are you so upset by it? You know, I should be able to say whatever I want. They're not really educated. They're not that smart. Critical thinking skills are set to simmer, not to boil. And, you know, they're not thinking it all the way through. And, you know, the only way they understand is if you attack something that they hold dear to their hearts. And then they get really upset. But they don't make the connection that when their sacred cows are trampled on, it's okay to get upset. But if they trample on other people's sacred cows, it's not. Their concern, of course, also, and this is being way too gracious to them, is the slippery slope. You know, okay, who gets to decide what we get to be intolerant of? In this case, being intolerant of Nazis is a pretty safe bet. Our grandfathers and great-grandfathers fought a couple of wars for some of your fathers, fought a couple of wars to stop this type of intolerance. The original anti-fascists, Antifas. Most recently fought a 5-year war in Germany, in Europe, as well as in Japan. It was nice to see the class backing up this teacher and the teacher leading this class. This is how we make progress forward. It's not through hatred. It's not through violence on the other side. It's being strong and being united. And they will melt and fold like cowards behind that because they don't have a big base to support them. They're scared little individuals who come out to troll people and don't expect consequences. And when the consequences happen, they're usually stunned. Thank you very much for watching this video and supporting my channel. I appreciate it. This reading is for entertainment purposes only, but I hope you found it insightful, and I'll catch you on the next video. Take care.